Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We have to return to the original. Is anyone recording this?
Yes.
Okay. We have to return to the original teachings and the original practice. And then the whole idea that, well, anyone can interpret it in any way they like, and there are various ways to practice, that is rejected by fundamentalists. And we only one way. There's only one way to practice. They want to say that. And that one way is very strict moral codes. We'll find fundamentalist Christians and Muslims and others, they won't allow free mixing of men and women. They may punish very strictly transgressions of this. For instance, in Iran and Saudi Arabia, women who are convicted of adultery are executed. In Iran, homosexuality or active homosexuality is punished, capital punishment. Especially in gender relationships, this is something that the liberal humanitarian ethos has promoted very much, that men and women should be free to mix and shouldn't discriminate between them, but fundamental religionists do very much discriminate and have different roles, and they're very strict in upholding this. At the same time, although the fundamentalist religions, they talk about going back to the old ways, at the same time they're usually quite expert in using modern media for propagating their message and modern methods of organization. They're not shy to do that. And generally, although they say that they want to go back to a previous state in which religion was practiced, it's sometimes seen that they become maybe more intolerant than such religions were in the past. Although here in England, religious intolerance, well, that was a major reason for the upswing of liberal humanitarianism, because Catholics, my religious education was as a Catholic, raised in a Catholic family, was most of what I can remember from the religious education was about how the Protestants in England used to torture and kill all the Catholics. We were never taught about how the Catholics used to torture and kill the Protestants, which was also there. We only heard one side of the story. So intolerance is connected with fundamentalism. There's just a very nasty treatment of others who don't agree with them or don't want to follow them. So why is this fundamentalism coming up? Why would someone who's raised in a pluralistic, multicultural country like England, which has gone to great lengths to try to accommodate everybody, why would fundamentalism arise? It's considered a problem in England, in Britain. Well, that's a complex question. Often it's said that the people who join these fundamentalist groups, they're people who feel left out by society despite the efforts to include everyone, but they feel that they're the left outs of society. People are born into Muslim religion feel that despite great efforts to give them a good deal, they feel that they're still left out, or they feel that everyone should be like this. Why we want to practice Islam, but how can we do it properly when the whole society is different? So it can be seen as a reaction to secular cultural values. Everyone does whatever they like, however they like, and actually it's a fact that the secular liberal society, although it gives everyone the opportunities, or at least theoretically, to live their life as they want, it's spiritually empty, because actually it's based on atheism. The idea that we're in this world to enjoy it, and everyone should just get on with the business of enjoying it as best they can, and any way you want to do it is okay. But the idea that we're here in this world to enjoy it, and especially the idea that, well, anyone can have any opinion they like, this tolerance, this stops religious persecution and religious wars, but it rejects religion which says, no, you can't do whatever you like, you have to live like there are rules you have to follow. Or the religions which say, well, you just believe in God, but you don't have to follow rules very much, to try to make some adjustment or compromise with modern society. These compromises, either secular or religious, they leave people spiritually empty. You can do what you like, but if you do what you like, as Srila Prabhupada explained, you become an animal, because the animals have no morality, they have no religion. Of course, atheists will say, yes, we have morality, but it's definitely a very stretched and compromised morality compared to that of previous times when there was a religious morality. So people who feel spiritually empty, even if you go to the church, for instance, you might find that there's nothing really very spiritual there. It's maybe some social gathering. Again, I went to the Catholic Church. I must have sat through dozens and dozens of Sunday sermons, and I can't remember one single word of them. And every day in our Catholic school, please turn off your cell phone, or otherwise we'll call in the fundamentalists. Execute you. Whoops, that might be taken literally. Maybe 50 years down the line, there'll be followers of Bhakti Vikasa Swami who, you said in the lecture, any on cell phones goes off, execute, and then they'll actually do it and take the evidence. You have to be careful what you say. They'll be dragged out of the hall and shot. Okay, that was a joke. Don't take it literally. They might shoot me. So, as I was saying, but I forgot what I was saying because I got off topic, which is why we want to... not Sunday school, I was in the church, and daily at school, 5 days, that horrible institution called the school, which even thinking of it still gives me good impetus not to come back in this world again. Every morning we had a religious assembly. It was required in a Catholic school. And again, I don't remember anything that was any of the speeches. Every day I just turn off and catch up on the sleep which I didn't have enough of the night before. So there's nothing there. There's nothing to grab onto, to feel that we're actually practicing a religion. If a religion allows you to do whatever you like, then what's the difference between being in a religion and not being in a religion? And what's the point of being a part of it? If we say, yeah, you just chant Hare Krishna and you don't have to follow any rules, just do whatever you like, then there's nothing there. There's nothing to help us to feel that we're becoming purified. If there are no moral standard, no direction, or just, you believe in Jesus or believe in Krishna and whatever way you want to do it, it's all okay, but then there's no direction. So there's an emptiness, and that's maybe one reason why people who, in their modern life, where, do whatever you like, however you like, whenever you like, with whoever you like, as you like, but people get lost. They want direction. How should I live actually? Also, people who've tried living like that, and they've done everything, intoxication and sex and everything, and they want they feel completely burned out from that, and they want some direction to improve their life. And strict religious processes can give that. Whereas for all our liberal modern way of life, there's no satisfaction for the soul. So people may seek that in a religious fundamentalism. They go from one extreme to another. It may be that people, they just feel, they feel left out. That others they're enjoying, I'm not enjoying. So they want to be part of a group in which they have an identity and a purpose, and they're with people with a mission and an ideal. These are some psychological analyses of why people should take to that. With the society changing all the time, people, they're not sure what they should do. There's this Rambo movie, and there was this idea men should be very super masculine, but not however much you go to the gym and take steroids and all this kind of thing. I mean, I'm sure with the present body I'm in, there's not much I could do to become anything like Rambo. But this, or an idea for the women's liberation. Women, they should go up and get ahead and show the world how great you are. But not everyone can do that. And they just end up with some crummy job in a factory at most, and then they feel, they're showing. Or in the movies, you see all the beautiful women and the men, but you want that, but you can't get it. So you feel left out. So, actually in many ways, Krishna consciousness, especially the way that Srila Prabhupada presented it, is similar to fundamental Islam. Now, don't take that out of context. But there are definitely some ways in which it is similar. For instance, Srila Prabhupada said that the state should be ruled, theocracy, that we should be ruled by the rules of scripture, that everyone should have some religion, and the state should be run according to the rules of scripture. So that's the same as fundamentalist Islam. Apart from fundamentalist Islam, all Islam is supposed to be not just a religion in the sense that, something you believe and it's part of your life, but Islam is supposed to regulate every aspect of your life. 5 times a day praying, and there's so many different details, and practically about how one should live one's life, and practically in Vedic culture, more than Islam, every single aspect of life is ruled by scripture, even how to build a house, which room should be in, where the kitchen should be within the kitchen, where the stove should be, down to very tiny details. Of course, Srila Prabhupada didn't introduce all of that, but he certainly gave a whole way of life, that one should rise early, rules to follow. One should eat only food offered to Krishna, and only food that is offerable to Krishna, not that you can go outside and buy some bread from a shop and offer it and say it's prasadam. Well, you can do that, but it's not what you're supposed to do. So it's a whole package. Dress codes, wearing tilak all the time. So it's something which really, it's not just something like in the secular liberal outlook. They say, if they're not atheistic fundamentalists like Richard Dawkins, they'll say, yeah, you can be religious if you like, but just keep it to yourself and don't show it off. Why do you have to show it off by dressing in a certain way? Just keep it to yourself. It's just for yourself. But Krishna consciousness is a whole way of life, as distinguished from religion, as a part of life. So people who feel left out or who feel the spiritual emptiness, they may take to that. And the freedom that's offered in modern life, those who are fundamentalists, or religious fundamentalists, they say, no, it shouldn't be like that. It's not good. You shouldn't allow people to be free. So that is a very clear distinction, a very contentious distinction between liberal secularism, liberal humanism, and religious fundamentalists. That they say, no, you shouldn't be free. People should not be free to have free sex. People should not be free to take intoxication. They should not be free to eat meat. At least in Krishna consciousness. Actually in all these fundamentalists, not in Christianity, but in Islam you can eat meat under certain conditions, which has been interpreted to mean that you can kill the animal under certain conditions, but it's meant to restrict that. And in Krishna consciousness, meat eating in what Srila Prabhupada envisaged as a Krishna conscious state, meat eating would be allowed, but not for those who are committed Vaishnavas, but understanding that some people will eat meat under certain very restricted circumstances. Meat eating is allowed. Slaughterhouses are not allowed. So the idea that everyone should be free, those who are religious fundamentalists, they see severe drawbacks in that. Srila Prabhupada is also very critical of this, that giving freedom. He said, if you give freedom to people who are not spiritually enlightened, they will misuse it. And the whole modern society is evidence of that. That there are slaughterhouses, rampant intoxication. Intoxication is a central part of British culture. Alcohol, drinking is central to British culture. And over the last maybe 300 years or so, smoking of tobacco and smoking of marijuana has also become central, if somewhat underground. So it's still not allowed by law, although socially many people don't have any objection to it. So this idea that everyone should have freedom to pursue happiness in terms of sensual pleasure, that is probably more restricted in Krishna consciousness than in other religious processes, where they have the idea that, well, you can enjoy the world, but according to religious laws. But in Krishna consciousness we say, well, no, this world is not for enjoyment at all. So more strict in some ways than the Christian, Judaistic or Jewish or Muslim fundamentalists. We're more strict. They'll eat meat. We say no meat. In Christianity, alcohol is allowed. We say no, not allowed. At least if you're going to practice Krishna consciousness. strictly. It may be allowed for certain low-class people. And that's another point, that everyone has the freedom to vote. Srila Prabhupada is against that. Why should everyone have a vote? They don't know what they're voting for. They can't understand all the issues involved, and we find that, for instance, in one election, John F. Kennedy in America, John F. Kennedy was ascertained that he won the election because he was more good looking than Richard Nixon, who was the opponent. So, and the women mostly voted for JFK, who was young and fashionable, had a beautiful wife, and seemed to be a very attractive personality, and on very superficial reasons people voted for him. So Srila Prabhupada, he also said that in society which is administered by Krishna consciousness, freedom would be curtailed. Now that is something very frightening to the secular liberal people, and it's maybe frightening to us also, if we think that if we were, for instance, to go to or be in a place where freedom is curtailed, either by religious fundamentalism, such as Islamic rule. We were just discussing, as we were coming here, about certain states, Muslim countries, where our movement has difficulty because of the government. In a large part of Europe and Russia, which spans Europe and large part of Asia, previously, due to lack of freedom, our movement was very much oppressed. So we also want freedom in one sense, but our ultimate aim would be to establish a society that curtails freedom. Actually, that's a fact. But in a manner that's beneficial for everyone. The difficulty is that everyone doesn't agree that it's beneficial. We say that, well, it's beneficial for everyone. Close the slaughterhouses. Stop alcohol, restrict alcohol drinking. So most people would think, oh, that's fundamentalism. Well, yeah, maybe it is. We want to bring that in. So, what do we do about that? Are we fundamentalists in Krishna consciousness? Well, if we see what the aim of our society is, yes. And the very fact that we dress in a certain way, of course, Srila Prabhupada wasn't insistent that all devotees of Krishna dress in the manner that I'm dressed in or similar, but he did say that all devotees in all circumstances should have tilak. He did allow that they could put it on with water in some circumstances, but he definitely preferred that they keep Gopi Chandam tilak wherever they went. Men should have shikas, especially if they're going to worship the deity. Brahmin must have a shika in traditional culture. There's no question, and Srila Prabhupada upheld that. So, we can't have Krishna consciousness without being, at least Krishna consciousness as Srila Prabhupada gave it to us, without being in some ways what people would consider to be fundamentalist. At the same time, we are universalist, which is the opposite of fundamental, all-embracing, in as much as we want that everyone that this is our universalism, that we want everyone to come to Krishna consciousness. And we invite everyone to the kirtan. We don't insist that everyone immediately take to Krishna consciousness fully. Everyone is welcome to join our festivals and our programs and join in the kirtan and take prasadam. And we have faith that if they do so, that they will gradually become more and more and more Krishna conscious, and voluntarily they will take up Krishna consciousness in a more serious manner. So both this universalism, that we love everyone, we embrace everyone, we let everyone do what they like, we don't impose anything on anyone, and fundamentalism, that no, there should be a strict following of God's laws. Both of them are forms of idealism, that we want the best for human society. But that idea is there, but it has to be ascertained what is actually best. The idea that we should let everyone do what they like within certain parameters, it certainly hasn't produced a happy world, has it? And Britain is a very liberal country, but it's not a very happy country. It hasn't produced a society in which people actually respect each other and care for each other and help each other. There's a lot of crime in this country. So, in many ways it seems that the ideas that we should just live and let live, it's not working. People are not happy. There's so much cause for distress in society. So this idea that just let everyone live as they like, it doesn't seem to be working. And is fundamentalism the cure? Well, those who are fundamentalists would say so. Yeah, that's my notes. But then this highly sectarian outlook, that seems to lead to a lot of hatred and war and violence. That's why they're afraid of fundamentalism. But on the other hand, this open secularism, it's not that war and violence seems to stop, because at the present time we see at that very moment, it's just in the last couple of weeks or so, and it's very much a hot issue in the news right now, is that the Western governments, especially USA, those of the USA, the United Kingdom, as long as it's united, might not be for many more days, and Australia, they want to go and fight against fundamentalists in the Middle East with no particular agenda, just they want to go and bomb them with the idea that we want to wipe them out. There's no question of wiping them out. They can't do it. But to uphold their secular beliefs, they're ready to go to war with those who are fundamentalists. So it doesn't seem that secularism and liberalism in and of itself is the cure, because how do you deal with fundamentalists? Maybe they have the idea if everyone became like that, then we'd all be happy, but everyone's not becoming like that. So what is our position? Are we fundamentalists, universal? Well, Krishna conscious is what? Sarvo padi vinir muktam tatparat vena nirmalam hrishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. Devotional service to Krishna is beyond the categories of this world. It means serving Krishna with all our senses. So we want to bring everyone to Krishna consciousness. We'd like to do so. Force will not work in this age, especially. We should know why. People would say we have to follow Islam, we have to follow Christianity just like this, or in Judaism we have to clear all the non-Jews out of the Holy Land by genocide if necessary. So Srila Prabhupada, he preached the philosophical understanding of Krishna consciousness based on Shastra, so that people can understand why we should practice Krishna consciousness. Not attempting to forcefully impose it on others, but appealing to people's intelligence. It is a sign of spiritual maturity, we can say, that while, first of all, one should know what is right and what is not right, otherwise pravriting chane vriting chana janana vidura suraha. Those who do not know what is right and what is wrong, Krishna says, what is to be done and what is should not be done, they are called the asuras, demons. So we should know what is right. But it's a sign of spiritual maturity to understand that not everyone's going to immediately follow everything that we say, which is why Srila Prabhupada said that even though we are not at all inclined to meat eating, within a Krishna conscious society, meat eating can be allowed, because there'll always be people who are meat eaters, and so under certain conditions, you can once a month you can sacrifice an animal, not a cow. And eating of beef is allowed. Srila Prabhupada said they can eat beef, but no slaughter of cows. The cow that naturally dies, you can take the animal, those who want to eat. So Srila Prabhupada, he was inclusive in that way. And Srila Prabhupada also didn't say that we have to convert all the Christians and the Muslims. No, he said that if you're a Christian, be a good Christian. If you're a Muslim, be a good Muslim. So that's, we could say, sign of spiritual maturity, to recognize that not everyone, it's not going to happen that everyone's going to aim for pure devotional service in that life, in this life. That's the goal, the ultimate goal, but we find in the Vedic culture, there are karmis, gyanis, yogis, people on different levels. Are you chanting or are you listening to the lecture? Huh? So what are you listening to, the lecture or the chant? You're not chanting. You're doing both. You have two minds. How is that possible? Let's see. There's a time and a place for everything, including chanting. And we should, when we're in the lecture, we should listen to, if you want to listen, you should listen to the lecture. So we can appreciate also that we shouldn't get into this mindset that, well, every Muslim's a fanatic, or there are very spiritually minded people who they're very pious. And Srila Prabhupada once said that he related to one of his disciples that the previous night I had a dream in which I saw the heaven that all the pious Muslims go to. Interesting. So they're also to see that other people are also pursuing God. They're interested in God. They may not have the full knowledge that Srila Prabhupada has kindly given us, that Krishna's kindly given us, but they are trying, according to the tradition they know, to be godly. So that's better than being atheistic. In Vedic culture, this fundamentalism, it's not there. It's what is now called Hinduism is well known to be tolerant. So if we say we're going to be Hindu fundamentalists, then maybe we should be tolerant. But the problem with the tolerance is that you let everyone do what they like, and they take advantage of that, and then they forcibly convert people, and so that's why Hindu fundamentalism, as they call it, has come as a backlash to people taking advantage of the tolerance. Tolerance has its limits also. We can tolerate people's mistakes or their misbehavior, but if they repeatedly do so with no sign of wanting to reform, then they become a social menace, and they may have to be dealt with as such. In Vedic culture, we could say verbally intolerant. That there's a lot of it's highly polemic, and we'll find that there are heated and very acrimonious discussions between, for instance, in South India, between Vaishnavas and Shaivas, between Vaishnavas and Mayavadis. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very strongly against the imitative Vaishnavas, but mostly it doesn't go farther than words. It doesn't come to the extent of killing, imprisoning. There has been some also, but generally that's not been part of Vedic culture. It tolerates people to have, people can practice different modes of religion, although there may be very strong opposition verbally, but not, and maybe culturally also, that those who are, for instance, who don't follow any Vedic rules, they're called chandalas, and they don't live within the society, they don't live within the town, they have to stay outside if they're so low class and they don't follow any rules and regulations. So this Vedic culture, Varnashram Dharma, doesn't physically force people, and it has a lot of accommodation within its own sphere. But then what happens, for instance, when you have other religions come, okay, well, we can welcome them also, but then they want to kill cows, which is completely against what's allowed in Vedic culture. A Vedic king should not allow that. Then what to do with that? This whole independence movement in India was presented, especially by Mahatma Gandhi, as a religious struggle. That we want to establish our religion. That was the idea. And it was presumed that when India gets independence, that cow killing will be stopped. It was just presumed. But then when they wanted to stop it, Mahatma Gandhi said no. He stopped it. He said, because the Muslims and Christians, they want to eat cows. It's part of their religion. You have to allow it. And because of the respect for him, it was allowed, which was one reason it seems that certain people were so unhappy with him that he was assassinated. So, how do we apply accommodativeness with others who want to do things in the name of their religion, which is, if we want to talk in terms of this religion, that religion, which is not really in the Vedic culture to do so. But yeah, just a very, very real problem there of cow killing. How do you deal with that? Srila Prabhupada, he appreciated the openness of the United States. He several times said that he appreciated that America gave him the freedom to spread Krishna consciousness. But in other ways, he didn't appreciate that. He said it's a cat-dog society, and he wanted to reform it. So we can see that Srila Prabhupada appreciated freedom in some ways, but in other ways, he wanted to establish a society which would be considered fundamentalist. How do we apply that in the modern age? What should we say? Should cow killing be stopped in India? I don't think it can be stopped because there are so many Muslims and they'll do it in areas where they're strong. Just like you can't, there have been attempts to stop alcohol consumption, but it just goes underground, that's all. In this country, they've been, for decades now, they've been trying to stop importation of marijuana and illicit production and consumption of various psychotropic drugs, but they haven't been able to stop it. So I don't think cow killing can be stopped. Legally it can be stopped. But how far can you take that? As I see it, the only way to actually stop cow killing in India, which we actually want to stop it all over the world, is to convince those who want to do it that it's better that they don't do it. That's not such an easy task. But these are the kind of questions we have to think about. Srila Prabhupada didn't want Krishna consciousness only to be like a Sunday gathering like in the Christian religion, but he had plans that we should tell the people, we should speak to the leaders and tell them that this is how society should be conducted, and give them ideas. There's so many social plans Srila Prabhupada had. Go back to the land, close these nasty factories, live simply, chant Hare Krishna. In the state that Srila Prabhupada envisaged, atheism would not be allowed. Everyone would have to be religious. They could be a Christian or a Muslim, whatever, but everyone would have to practice some religion. So these are just a few thoughts. Getting over time. Can you give me another 10 minutes? Okay. Devotees often call me fundamentalist. I advocate strict practice. So maybe that's fundamentalist in the best sense of the term, because in Krishna consciousness, as in anything else, you get out what you put in. If we study well in school, we can expect to get good grades. If we practice Krishna consciousness strictly, we can expect to make more advancement than if we don't. Of course, everything ultimately depends on Krishna's mercy, but Krishna has given us the rules so that we can come closer to Him. That is His mercy. So I advocate strict practice, but I don't advocate some mindless adherence to rules and some idea that we should just ram it down people's throats, forceful propagation. Following Srila Prabhupada's example, I try to preach strongly, clearly, but appealing to people's intelligence, not forcefully. As Srila Prabhupada said, force will not stand. You can try and force people, but it won't work. One of my godbrothers, I saw him, this was maybe about 15 years ago, I met him. He'd been many years in Iran during the revolution and everything, and stayed on. And I don't know what he was doing exactly, but he lived there in post-revolution Iran. And I asked him, well, how is it? What is it? How do people like living under a strict Islamic government? And he said, well, a lot of people don't like it at all. They don't want, they want to go back to the old life where they had a lot more freedom. They're Muslims, they're not against being Muslims, but they don't like to be forced to practice in such a strict way and restricted from doing so many things that they used to do, that they like to do. So that made me think that, well, we can have laws, but the real, in the prospect of having a Krishna conscious government, we can have laws, but the real way to conduct a Krishna conscious state is to make Krishna consciousness so appealing that people will want to practice it, not force them so much. There was also the Srinivasa Acharya, if you remember, if you've heard his life story, as we say, he converted the king, Vishnu Vardhana, in that Bankura area of Bengal, what's now Bankura. And the king made a law that everyone has to chant at least one round a day of japa, and there were people who didn't like that, and they complained and they made jokes about it. And so some strictness should be there, But simply by force, people cannot become Krishna conscious. Now, within our movement, those who are initiated, they voluntarily submit to practice Krishna consciousness very strictly. And that's another thing we were discussing, that as we were coming, there's no use to initiate people unless they're prepared to follow strictly. As Srila Prabhupada said, everyone's welcome to come, but if they want to be initiated, they should practice strictly. So we have strictness, yes, but one should voluntarily submit oneself to that strictness. And if one does want to be initiated, then they should be prepared for that. Otherwise, there's no need to initiate people unless they are actually prepared to follow very strictly. I'm going to read something now stated by Allen Ginsberg, who was not at all strict in following anything. He was a proponent of great liberalism, degradation, if you like. Yes, degradation, not if we, it is degradation. I'm going to read something that he said, addressing a class of students at Ohio State University in 1969, introducing Srila Prabhupada and his mission to the students. So, he referred, it is in the presence of Srila Prabhupada, he was introducing Srila Prabhupada, so he referred to the importation of a very strange Oriental form, because he had been to India and he'd seen the Hindu culture, and he didn't think that Hindu culture in and of itself was strange, but he thought that Srila Prabhupada's presentation of it was a very strange Oriental form, almost a hard-shelled Baptist Oriental form. Baptist is usually thought of as fundamentalist Christian. Hard-shelled Baptist Oriental form in the sense of its traditionality and its fundamentalism. Its reliance on ancient texts and interpretation of ancient texts by long tradition of teachers. It's strange, it's so far out and ritualized an Indian form. It's strange that such a ritualized Indian form should take root in the United States a little more naturally than the more Protestant Vedanta society or the extremely rigorous Zen groups that have taken root. I think partly it's due, and this is very important because he's saying that what Prabhupada is presenting, it's like born-again Christianity of Hinduism. But then he says, why has it taken root? Allen Ginsberg says, I think partly it's due to the magnanimity or generosity or the old age charm, wisdom, cheerfulness of Swami Bhaktivedanta. That Srila Prabhupada himself, although he advocated a very strict form of Krishna consciousness, he was, I'll continue. Allen Ginsberg, his openness of heart, his willingness to come down onto the street, to mix with all kinds of people, and his sense of his own divinity and the divinity of others around, that has been possible for the Bhakti Yoga of cult to be planted very firmly here in America. Shastra itself and Srila Prabhupada himself have statements that could be considered very fundamentalist, and others that are more broad. Here's a fundamentalist statement, if you like. Savadhaman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. Surrender to me only, Krishna says. That's his ultimate conclusion. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Ei kali kale ar nahi kono dharma Vaishnav Shastra, ei kohe marma. In this age of Kali, there is no other religion than the Vaishnav religion, and that's the essence of everything, the Vaishnav Shastra. This is the substance of everything. Again from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Paya manusha janma jena shune gora gona hena janma ta betta hoilo. Paya amrita dhuni piye bisha garta pani janme ashay kene nahi moilo. Anyone who attains a human body but does not take to the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is baffled in his opportunity. Amrita Dhuni is a flowing river of the nectar of devotional service. If after getting a human body one drinks the water in a poison pit of material happiness instead of the water of such a river, it would be better for him to have not lived but to have died long ago. Pretty fundamentalist. Well, what about ye yata mang prapadyante tangs tathaiva bhajamyaham mamavatmanu vartante manushaf partha sarvashaha. Krishna says, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone is on my path. So on the one hand is surrender to Krishna. You've got to do it. You've got to surrender to. On the other hand, well, okay. Everyone's connected with me, Krishna says. In the 12th chapter of Gita, Krishna says, just fully be absorbed in me. If you can't do that, follow the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga. If you can't do that, then work for me, cultivate knowledge of me. And here's an extract from one of Srila Prabhupada's purports to the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna consciousness itself can purify one's mind, but if there are impediments to accepting Krishna consciousness, one may try to give up the results of his actions. In that respect, social service, community service, national service, sacrifice for one's country, etc. may be accepted so that someday one may come to the stage of pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, we find it is stated, Yatha pravrittir bhutanam. If one decides to sacrifice for the supreme cause, even if he does not know that the supreme cause is Krishna, he will come gradually to understand that Krishna is the supreme cause by the sacrificial method. So how many times Srila Prabhupada spoke against nationalism, bodily welfare work, but here he says, well, at least it's a start of some kind. So, two different perspectives. Everything can be seen from different perspectives. Just like, for instance, if I ask an initiated devotee, how many rounds you chant a day? Say 3 rounds a day. Say, what? Come on. That's terrible. You vowed to chant 16 rounds a day. But if we say to a newcomer, how many rounds you chant a day? 3 rounds a day. Oh, it's very good. Great. Good. So, different people at different levels, we may see them differently. So, actually there's nothing to do but surrender to Krishna. But, maybe not everyone's ready for that. So, we can encourage them to come up also. But we don't encourage, yeah. So, there's just a few thoughts on the fundamentalist issue. Should we be fundamentalist? Yes. In Krishna consciousness, we should be stick to the fundamentals, don't change anything. We should also be open and encourage people to come in and come up. Those who have come in, there have to be certain standards. We can't just allow all the standards to go, otherwise it becomes useless. So there may be different strokes for different folks, as they say. But if we're actually serious about Krishna consciousness, we have to practice it very strictly. Otherwise, what are we doing? We don't insist that, we may say strongly to others that you should practice very strictly, but ultimately everyone has to choose whether they're going to do so or not. So anyway, there's just a little overview, and it's getting late, and many questions like this we have to see in the world. What's going on in the world? How does our movement relate to the world? How do we live in this world? What is our attitude to various issues? We may not even have all the answers to everything immediately, because this world is very complex, and although Shastra has perfect knowledge, we may not always know how to apply that, or what's the best way to apply that. But we should think about all these things, isn't it? If we're actually going to bring Krishna consciousness to the world, we should consider how to apply all these things, and how we speak to people and tell them about, just like if they ask us, what's the Krishna conscious perspective? What's the Krishna conscious perspective on fundamentalist religion? Well, I hope that after hearing tonight's lecture, you could answer more fully than you would have been able to before it. Hare Krishna. Should we take questions or not?
I just want, yes, the questions, answers, and just to raise one point you made, which was a good one, that you can't force something on someone. Krishna consciousness can be forced. And I was
I'll repeat that. We can't force Krishna consciousness on others. We can be strong in our preaching, but we have to know it's up to them to take it or not.
It's a very good point. And I was reminded of a conversation that Prabhupada had with a police inspector in America, maybe New York somewhere. And
in Chicago.
Chicago. And he was explaining, well, maybe you can explain it. And he was explaining that, you try and correct the prisoners by catching them, putting them in prison, but because you don't change the consciousness.
Right. That's an important point. Lieutenant Mose, I think his name is pronounced, spelled M-O-Z-E. Srila Prabhupada said that he was addressing the question, crime, what to do. Having seen in the airplane a Time magazine with the cover, Crime, Why and What to Do, and talking about increasing crime in America. So Srila Prabhupada said you can put people in prison, and it's really an industry in America now. I think there are more than 3 million people in prison in America. They have a policy of, if someone's caught dropping a piece of paper on the street, they give them a 20-year imprisonment or something. Really, I mean, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but really draconian. Well, Srila Prabhupada said that why are the prisons filling up? You can forcefully try and punish them, but you really have to try and change their consciousness. That's the real solution. Purification of consciousness. So there are many important points which we should consider.
I have a question. Srila Prabhupada was liberal in some ways as well, in that he first allowed Mataji's...
Srila Prabhupada was liberal in some ways as well. I think I made that point. Yeah, he first of all allowed
like women to do puja.
He allowed women to do deity worship.
Gayatri mantra, they could do that. Otherwise, previous to that, they weren't.
Deity worship previously is allowed in the Gauriya Sampradaya. Many Sampradayas, mostly women do at home, not in the public temples. Gayatri mantra, well, actually the mantra diksha is given to women in Vaishnava Sampradaya, in Ramanuja Sampradaya, in Gauriya Sampradaya, but not the Brahma Gayatri, which is also not given to people who are born in families other than those of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. So yes, Srila Prabhupada was very liberal in some ways, but also we should see that the liberalism in the very beginning, he tightened it up actually, became more strict later in many ways. And he wanted to introduce pristine Vedic culture. But there's a reason why that culture is the way it was, because it's helpful for people to make spiritual advancement. But Srila Prabhupada was very liberal in the beginning, understanding that it's difficult for people to accept all these things immediately. So, Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Sorry if I delayed you too much. I'd like to remind you that I have books. Where are they?
Right up there.
Oh, books and CDs of my lectures are available here.
Okay, Hare Krishna, one more round of applause for Maharaj, please.
No, it's...
Okay. It's our appreciation.
Not a round of applause. It's not a show.